The last few Best Picture winners, starting from The Silence of the Lambs all the way to Forrest Gump, are films that I have very strong opinions on. Mostly for good, one for bad. However, that is not the case with today's winner, Braveheart, a film that I have no strong opinions on, neither positive nor negative. How refreshing? Braveheart was directed by Mel Gibson, who also stars as Sir William Wallace, a Scottish warrior who led the Scots during the First War of Scottish Independence against the British during the late 13th century and early 14th century. It has everything you'd want from a movie such as this: action, war, political intrigue, romance, betrayals, torture. What's not to love? Well, despite it doing all of these things fairly well, I don't feel like it excels in any of these things either, and I've seen them done better in other films. So what you get in the end is a solid film that does a serviceable job, but is hindered by a bunch of minor flaws that it really should have taken care of. I'll start with what the film does best, but before I do, I'd just like to say that 1995 was a very significant year for films, featuring fantastic works from burgeoning young directors like David Fincher and Bryan Singer, unorthodox career highlights from already established directors such as Martin Scorsese and Terry Gilliam, and a breathtaking technological breakthrough in the form of the very first 3D animated feature-length film in history. So, as you can probably guess, none of these films were nominated for Best Picture, of course. If only they'd had a bit more ambition and decided to honor the films that actually deserve to be honored, then I can guarantee that the Academy would be much more popular today than it is. But I guess that's too much to ask, and it's a true shame. Anyway, back to Braveheart. I'd like to begin with the best things about Braveheart and then move on to the things it doesn't do as well. For starters, the pacing is great. It's a 3-hour film that flies by. Also, I loved the audio-visual feel of the film. The opening shots of mountains accompanied by epic Scottish folk music really gave me this high fantasy Witcher vibe. Needless to say, it is right up my alley. I love this style and this tone, and it continues on for the rest of the film, which is great. The cinematography and music were a constant highlight. Another great thing about the film is the action. Braveheart is probably the most violent film to win Best Picture. I can't think of any that come even remotely close. The battle scenes were absolutely brutal. Quick-cut cacophonies of deadly blows, severed limbs, and blood spurts. I'm not sure I can even show this on YouTube, it's so graphic. These scenes were reminiscent of the epic battles in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, only, of course, Braveheart did it first. And also, I fairly liked the characters in the film, although this does bring me to the first minor flaw of the film, William Wallace himself. Now, I did say minor flaw because overall I do like the character. I liked his determination, his infectious passion for freedom, and I especially liked his more playful nature during the first half of the film. You know, before shit gets real. But even though William Wallace was a pretty good protagonist, he wasn't amazing. He felt a bit too perfect. He wanted to just live a peaceful life and start a family, but in no time he becomes a great warrior and leader of the Scots. Hell, he's so great at everything he does that he even woos the wife of the English prince. A great leader, a great fighter, and a great lover. A bit of wishful thinking there, eh, Mel? Even to his execution, look at how he gets carried out. Well, what did you expect from the man who'd go on to direct The Passion of the Christ? Let's just say that it was pretty distracting. I know the film is based on a real-life person and on actual historical events, but Braveheart is also notorious for being one of the most historically inaccurate films of all time, so I believe that my criticism is valid here. As for the rest of the characters, they were alright. I liked some of his companions, especially this crazy Irish guy who was really entertaining every time he was on screen. I liked the character of Longshanks, the King of England. He was a very effective and despicable villain who uses immoral and backhanded tactics to win. I mean, the whole thing about giving English lords the right to bed Scottish brides on their wedding day? That's a whole other level of f***ed up. But it's great for a villain. His son, however, was incredibly lame, but I think that was the point. When it comes to other issues the film has, I guess the problems I have with it revolve around the fact that it's just not a remarkable film in almost any way. It's definitely not an actor's showcase. None of the performances did anything noteworthy to me. As far as the story goes, it's very basic, surface-level stuff, with a simple message of fighting for freedom. A positive message for sure, but, you know, nothing special there. And even though it's well made on a technical level, it's not on the same level as other films that just do the same things better. Also, the ending was pretty lame. Let's just leave it at that. In short, I did enjoy Braveheart. It's not a terrible film by any stretch. It's a solid film with great pacing, a likable main character, and some decently brutal action scenes. But the film also didn't stick out to me in any particular way. It also didn't stick with me after it ended. It just doesn't have much going for it other than what you see on the surface. Do with that as you will, but ultimately for me, Braveheart was a mixed bag. Braveheart was a decent Best Picture winner, but it's nowhere near the heights of the early 90s winners in my opinion. Therefore, it finds itself languishing on the bottom half of the list. Not a bad movie, but certainly not a great one. Up next is the 69th Best Picture winner.
Nice.
A romance movie starring the guy who played both Voldemort and Aemon Good from Schindler's List. Perfect casting right there. The English Patient. Check back again for the next video of DB Review's Oscar Madness Marathon and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss a thing. Thank you all very much, and let the journey continue.